speaker and refrain from using your cell phones and all that stuff. And I would like to welcome our first speaker, Charles.
Thank you, Sierra. My name is Charles. I'm an alcoholic. Good evening, everyone, or good evening, y'all, in my native tongue. My sobriety date is February 23rd of this year, which is my 6th sobriety date, having been coming to AA since November of 2023. I keep coming back. Perhaps my overwhelming message to someone here, based on my experience, is keep coming back. To always get back on the horse. I have found no profound answer or magic that keeps me coming back. Most often it has been by the great support of my sponsor and remembering sometimes to just put one foot in front of the other and keep moving, almost a safety in movement. The expression that for the alcoholic it is about seconds and inches, I have found to be true and golden for me. Born and raised in Oklahoma, our father was an alcoholic that left when I was 8. I saw the destruction my dad would bring home each night after drinking, the yelling and fighting between my parents almost every night, him getting physically sick at times around the house. I came home from school one day and my mom's sister and brother were sitting on one couch and my dad by himself on another. Everyone was crying except my dad and I. I hadn't even put my backpack down yet when my mom proceeded to announce to the family that she wanted my dad to leave, but wanted to talk to the family about it, I guess as a family decision, keeping in mind that us kids were 4, 8, and 12 years old. Strangely, to this very day, I'll never forget that for me, there was no hesitation. I said out loud that I wanted him to leave also. Then I started crying, as did my dad as well. Not sure what brought that response out of an 8-year-old's mouth or mind, courage or fear or both. My dad, grandfather, uncle, and another immediate family member all had or have an alcohol problem. I was 14 years old when I took my first drink, and it changed my life. Seemingly, this magical elixir got rid of all my insecurity, fear, and doubt. I would attend parties in middle school, or as we used to call it, junior high, where I come from, or go to someone's birthday pizza party and would need alcohol to feel good enough to fit in or to belong, often guzzling down drinks before I even entered the door. My high school years were magnified 5 times. I somehow managed at that time to hide it from my mom and family. As time went on, the noose tightened. I moved to California after school in 1987 to start a new life, as I'd recognized my drinking had gotten out of control. The problem, of course, is that I accompanied myself to California. Within a few months, I was right back where I was before, only in a new location. I found religion in 1991 and quit everything cold turkey. I married my wife in 1993, but slowly the old Charles started coming back. Sneak drinking at night until it finally consumed me and my marriage. Not coming home some nights, waking up in my car in unfamiliar neighborhoods, or on the Redondo Beach Pier where at the crack of dawn the fishermen would poke me with their fishing poles to see if I was still alive. There was much more at stake now, having a wife and 2 children. My wife one morning said to me, for this first term in our marriage, I believe you would take yourself over me and the kids. She was right. I started attending a chemical recovery within our church at the time. I told my wife and friends I would never go to AA, as I had attended a couple of meetings back in the early 90s to support a friend and relative who were attending meetings, noting from my perspective at the time, meaning judgment prior to investigation or knowledge, was that the AA program was where people exchanged their alcohol addiction for a life of slavery, of meetings, cigarettes, and coffee. Oh, my ignorance and arrogance. I went on to graduate chemical recovery, but apparently I was not aware my certificate or diploma had an expiration. My wife and I moved to Arizona in 2021 during COVID. Just prior to moving, I started again sneak drinking while my wife was away on business travel. And once in Arizona, the vicious cycle began again. I tried a faith-based recovery here in Prescott, and though it might work for some, it was not working for me. My guilt, shame, and embarrassment had overtaken me. There was only one place left for me, the proverbial end of my rope, here in AA. The program that I'd once judged has saved my life and my marriage. Where now the greatest books in my life are the good book and the big book, in that order. I'll never forget that as I began reading the big book, I could not help but have this indescribable sense, call it ghostly, that the book was truly inspired by something, and that this something knew most everything about me and my condition. I recently heard the expression, discover, uncover, remove. The big book has opened my mind and heart to begin the process, this journey, along with my relationships within the program. My first AA meeting, I knew nothing about AA. I had no clue how one becomes a member. I thought at the end of the meeting there would be someone that would ask who wants to become a member. Instead, they referred to anyone needing a sponsor, which I was not sure what that meant. My sponsor, whom I did not know at the time, happened to be performing an act of service that night, the managing of the service commitments, which somehow I translated commitment as member. I know it makes no sense. But the rest, they say, is history. I approached him after that meeting on becoming a member, and since that evening, he's been my sponsor and dear friend. I believe my higher power was already paving my path before I knew it. I've not yet attained a year of sobriety, but I've kept coming back. For me, without the support system and sponsorship and tools within the program, I would not have a chance, no hope. I'm grateful for my sponsor, his steadfastness to the AA program, and those many who have gone before me as a light for my path. In closing, thus far my greatest challenge or character defect, besides fear and insecurity, among others, on my sobriety journey has been honesty. Being honest with myself and then with others. Since a child, I've been great at hiding things. I would literally hide things around the house, thinking a burglar was going to break in and steal my stuff, so I would hide it. Problem is I couldn't find it again once I tried to look for it. Perhaps in that reflection, I've learned that through the program that I'm still great at hiding things from myself. Discover, uncover, remove. And lastly, two key things for me in my experience, and it was expressed in the birthdays earlier, and happy birthday to those of y'all, that I would impart to you tonight to consider are, number one, being consistent in attending meetings. Never stop coming back. And two, get a sponsor and work hard at developing this relationship, sacrificing the time necessary to bring the greatest value from the relationship. I now understand my sponsor has to know me best to help me. Thank you for allowing me to share.
I would like to welcome our next speaker, Eric. Welcome, Eric.
Good evening, I'm Eric, and I am an alcoholic. I'm one of those low-bottom alcoholics, so I think you said, like 6 attempts? This is probably my 25th. But And I'm glad Mike Bennett isn't here. That means I can curse like a sailor, right? What do you mean, no, Joe? Come on. It's good to be here. I haven't been to the regular group since I was at Safe Harbor. I have another commitment on Wednesday night. So, Chris, thank you for asking me to speak, and thank you all for showing up. So I was kind of hoping the room will be full because I love public speaking, but it's good to see so many people I know. If you hate public speaking, there's an outside group. They're called Toastmasters. Go do it. It'll change your world. Where else can I go? Someplace people have to sit there and listen to me talk for 15 minutes. But yeah, once again, I am definitely an alcoholic. This has been a rough journey for me. There's a lot of good faces I know here. One of my two best friends, Sarah, Mitch, Jordana, Joe, Brent, Anna, Chris, John. Won't talk about him, but oh, come on, Polly, don't look hurt. But I've been blessed because of a lot of people in this room and a lot of people around the room. That's the only reason I'm here. It's a miracle beyond belief I'm sober. And some of the people can tell you that. They've seen me in my worst. A couple of my best buddies have saved my ass, done 12-step calls on me twice. And that's what I needed to do. And for me, it was tough because I'm of the intellectual variety. You know, with spiritual experience, it says in the back of the book, Appendix 2, that's me to a nutshell. And even reading that, I didn't understand. I knew the steps. I knew showing up to meetings. I knew having a sponsor, working with others, and having commitments was a way to stay sober. But that wasn't enough for me because that was all up here. And reading a couple of outside books that have really taught me a lot about a spirituality, this is not who I am. This is just a tool for me to do things in a worldly manner. One of my best friends, Ken, he's probably the most spiritual person I know, or at least he talks it in a way I can understand. And he said to me one day, he says, we are not humans living a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings living a human existence. And I believe that absolutely. When something's wrong with my mind or body, it usually means my spirit's off. My mind and body always follow my spiritual path. So as soon as I can right my spiritual path, my mind and my body will come around. So when this thing's going crazy, I can't just turn it off. I can't just think of better things. I can't say no to it. But if I pray to God and I go in here where my connection with God is, that tones it down. Doesn't always take it away. No, I'm still crazy. I'm crazy beyond belief. But I have tools now that I'm able to deal with that. And I had no conception of spirituality. Like when I came into rooms, it was like speaking Mandarin Chinese. And that's one of the hardest languages on the planet to learn. You guys were telling me all those things, but I just had no comprehension. It was like gibberish. And it was tough. I tried and tried again. I tried multiple treatments. I see a gentleman from a treatment center here. Welcome. You probably found a solution to your problem, and it's not, for me, it was never what I could figure out. I could never figure it out. But I started to get it piece by piece. Each time I went back out, I learned a little more. I came back in, and everybody welcomed me, you know. People were like, it's good to see you're still alive. They didn't make fun of me. They didn't say I couldn't come back. And that's one of the true powers of this program. I told my friend Ken, I said, you know, I wish I'd gotten this 20 years ago. And he said, I don't. All the things he learned, and I agree. Mitch has said this to me. He said, I had to take every single drink I took to get here today. There was no other path for me. There's no other way. There is no treatment. There is no doctor, no psychologist, no psychiatrist, no medication that can keep me sober. I've proven that time and time and time again. And I won't embarrass him by saying his name, but I had a conversation riding home from a meeting. He was nice enough to give me a ride. And he told me about how hard he had to work on the spiritual program. And that really stuck with me. And it's like a little light bulb went off. It's like, I know all the mind stuff. I know all the knowledge and all that. But let me try that piece. And it kind of scared me. Like I said, I had no idea how to do it. And it says in the big book, this is a spiritual malady. It also says the primary purpose of this program is to connect us to a higher power, who I choose to call God. And God is great. He doesn't care. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was praying to him. He looked like Thor, you know, Chris Hemsworth. He's all sitting there with his hammer and stuff. God doesn't care, but I was able to pray with him. And I do those morning meditations and prayers. sit down, close my eyes, and I'd say the third step prayer. And those words relieve me of the bondage of self, or highlighted and in bold in my mind. That's the only thing I ever ask for myself. I don't ask for a new car or more money or whatever. Just relieving the bondage of self. And that's about relieving the bondage of this and be able to connect with my spiritual path. But it was good to finally have that awakening. And that's where my main focus is. Like I said, I read a couple books outside of the program. I think AA is good for like Spirituality 101, maybe 201, but it wasn't enough for me. I had to go to other literature. And it says, look where other people might have such knowledge, religion, whatever. And I read one, and I'll mention his name, it's by Eckhart Tolle. Now, Eckhart Tolle is like a 400-level spiritual for me. And I could grasp it and stuff like that. Now I'm reading this other book called Untethered Spirit, and it's like Eckhart Tolle for dummies, which is perfect for me. And it talks about the narrative. And the big book all goes over this, but I needed further help. That's why I'm bringing him into the conversation. Because I needed all the help I could get. My friends around me. So, my good friend Sarah helped me so much, and I was able to help her recently. And others like that. But it finally started to open the door. And I've had a couple of spiritual awakenings probably in about the past 6 weeks through a sister program called Al-Anon. Some of the members who go to that program are here. And I only bring it up because it is super important to me. And it was like I had this little cogs, this machine in my spirituality, and it was kind of clunking along. And hearing what those people share, because most of them are alcoholics, put like another machine in it, and it started to turn smoothly, slowly, but it started to turn smoothly. And where I had pockets of serenity in the past, at first maybe 5 minutes here or 30 minutes there, and then before that, maybe an hour or two or something. Now it's going to parts of days and stuff. When something contentious happens around me, like a coworker does something that annoys me, or I'm driving and someone pisses me off, or I have to wait in the checkout line, before I would pick up, I think visually like as a rock. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to get on this. I'm going to be pissed off at them. And then someone else does. I'm carrying around all these rocks. How am I going to be able to live? How am I going to be able to do anything? Well, recently I was able to just not pick them up. Like I'll feel that contention in me. Deep in here, my brain will start to go crazy. And now I just say, no, I'm not picking up the rock. And another piece of good outside literature, which is really paramount to me, is Golden Key by Emmett Fox. And it simply says, paraphrase, it says, when there is a problem, I don't think of the problem, I think of God instead. And that instantly connects me back to my spiritual practice. And even recently, I've been through a good amount in the past 2 months. There was one point to where I had picked up alcohol again as a solution and put it on the table to look if it would help with my problem. Played the tape through for about 5 seconds, saw a nuclear explosion, and said, nah, I don't think that's going to work. So alcohol is no longer a solution. And if you're new here, losing our solution requires something else for me to live life. I had no idea how to live life. That's what I love about Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not about drinking or not drinking. It's really important, I think, to do it. It's a design for living. I had no way to handle life. And because I couldn't do that, I had to go to alcohol. That was my only solution. That was my higher power for most of my life. And now it just isn't. The obsession has been lifted. Something goes wrong, I don't think of alcohol. I walk through Circle K, I don't look at the alcohol thinking that's great. So I had to replace it with something, hence Alcoholics Anonymous. And there are so many people in this room and outside this room that have been kind and generous and informative to me, that's the only way I have it. I have an A-team, pretty small A-team. Youngest, well, Sarah's probably one of the newest. My friend Spencer's 21 years younger than me, and then my friend Rod, he has 54 years of sobriety. I can't even comprehend that. I'm only 56, but, well, to get that much sobriety, you have to be old. He just laughs at me when I say that, but now it's just that whenever things go wrong, I know what to do. When there's a big decision to be made, I start calling my friends. I'm able to rely on them. I'm able to get that outside perspective. And trust me, I have the willpower of a giant. And it's done me wrong. Same thing with my intellect. I think I have a decently keen intellect. But it says in the big book, our intellect and our willpower will do us no good unless they're applied in the correct manner, which means the steps of AA. And there's only 12 steps. It's a simple program. But it's not easy because I have to do it every single day, all day long. But the benefits are beyond measure. Like I have a Sunday night meeting. That's basically my home group. It's the last day of work because I work through Sunday, and it caps off the week just phenomenally. Like I'm driving to that thing, and it's like I am jazzed on caffeine, and I'm ready to get there and see the people there. And I love that meeting. What a pleasure and an honor to be asked to come to speak, in front of a group of other alcoholics. I have 13 months. I know very, very little, but I've learned enough to where I'm able to deal with problems on a daily basis. Like I got a new thing and sitting in the parking lot, it takes me all over the dirt roads and stuff. I enjoy the hell out of that. But if that thing broke, I wouldn't drink. I'd just be, we'll get it fixed or back to square one. I don't care. The house I live in burned down. I'd be like, we'll find some place to live. If I lost my job, that sucks. Money's going to be an issue, but I'd find a new one. Because those are just things. Those are the things necessary for survival. I shared before in several meetings and said, if I don't make another cent per hour ever in my life, if I don't get a bigger truck or a newer truck, live in a better place, get any new fancy clothes, I'm going to die a happy person. Or at least serene. I will die knowing I had to go through hell, but I've done the best. I had to take every single drink. Absolutely. There was no other path for me. God made it perfectly. And I try to do this program the best of my ability every day. And the best some days is not what I would consider great, but it keeps me sober. When I was early on, every night when I put my head down on a pillow and I had a bad day, I said, I'm going to bed sober. And a big sign would pop up in my head that said, win. Fireworks would go off and stuff like that. And I love step 12. What does step 12 say? Hey, you've done the steps. Great job. Now get to work. There's no big party. There's no big check. There's no hot lady waiting for you at the end. It just says, give it back. I love that phrase. We have to give it away to keep it. And I absolutely believe that. I have 4 men I'm working with. 2 are active and 2 are drifting off into the distance. And it's so hard because I can't do anything to stop them. I can't help them. I can't force them. No one could me. It was impossible. Mike Bennett's normally here. He was one of my sponsors before, and he had no more chance than anybody else. So I want to thank you again for asking me to speak, Chris. I want to thank you all for showing up. I really appreciate seeing all of you, and welcome from the guys from the treatment center. If you give this a chance, it'll pay off in spades, I guarantee it. So thank you.
All right, last but not least, let's welcome our last speaker, Chris.
Hello, my name is Chris, and I'm an alcoholic. Thank you all for being here. Congratulations to the newcomers. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, I don't do this normally, so thank you to my sponsor, John Martinez, for being here. I didn't prepare anything because that's how I am. So I thank God for YouTube, or I wouldn't have this tie. And so I came here 2017 with 4 kids to Prescott, thinking that a change of scenery, being around my family would help, because I knew I wasn't living right where I was. I knew I needed help with my kids, and I thought that would work. I didn't think I had a real problem. I just thought it was where I was living, and so I came here, and that didn't turn out well. So I was court ordered after wrecking my car to Salvation Army, 6 months, and after I did that program, they told me come back to Prescott. A friend in the program told me, call this guy John, and he'll get you hooked up with meetings. So I gave John a call, and he took me to my first meeting here in Prescott. So eventually I asked him to be my sponsor, and I thought, this guy seems pretty cool. And we started working the steps. I got a year here in Prescott, and was shortly after that, I went back out. I wasn't really doing what they told me to do. They told me you should go to a meeting every day. And I thought, I'm really not that bad. And, and it talks about that in the doctor's opinion. It says he'll forget the things in the past that he did, and eventually he'll want to drink again. And I somehow missed that. I'm not one to study, and it's just, I thought that I knew better. I thought I had it figured out. Plus, I thought I just did 6 months in a rehab, and they made me go to a meeting every day in there, and I graduated that. I'm fine now. And, little did I know, I was far from fine. I think I went to one meeting a week, and, I thought that I'll just coast through this. I'll get through this one way or another, And eventually I ended up drunk again. And I called my sponsor. He said, we're going to start over. And so I started over. And I think I had about 6 months when COVID hit. And I remember talking to him about it, and he says, I'm not worried. You shouldn't be worried. We're going to get through this. It's not a big deal. I do have 4 kids at home, so all 4 of them were on home on laptops, and I didn't think that was a big deal. But, as the book says, if you're not spiritually fit, if you're not working with others, if you're not doing everything you're supposed to be doing, you won't survive the hard times that are to come, So, and I'm, probably not saying that perfectly, but that's what happened. I did not survive. I like to think about the examples that have been set before me through others. After COVID was over, my sponsor stayed sober. I can remember, though, I wanted to say the examples of men in this program is really what got me to be here, got me to really try to give it a shot, There was a time, there was a snowstorm that hit here in Prescott. I had all 4 kids in my truck, and I don't know how to drive in the snow. I'm from California. So I slid into these snow banks like twice, threw my serpentine belt off, the engine stops, the heater stops. And one of the kids, my son, was 2 years old. So I call the tow trucks, none of them can show up. Everybody's busy because it's a mess. So I call home, and somebody told me, why don't you try calling your sponsor? So I called John, and he says, where are you at? I told him where I was at. He says, well, me and Paulie are just hanging out. We're going to go to the store and get you a serpentine belt. We're going to come to where you're at and help you put it on. I mean, I was floored. Like, you're going to drop everything you're doing and come help me out, I didn't have any friends that would do that, It was just unheard of to me. And that's what these guys did, Sorry. But fast forward, I guess, after my relapse, I didn't call for about 2 years. I went out for 2 years after COVID. I was still working. I was still somewhat using the principles because they were saving my butt, keeping me out of trouble with the law. But I did manage to get a job. I did manage to white knuckle, a little bit here and there, but I was not sober, It got so bad to where my health started to deteriorate. So I called John again, and he had the same number. I had been through 4 numbers since then. So I said, he answers the phone and he hears my voice and he goes, "Chris." And I was like, "Hey," and he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, I can't live like this anymore, and he says, "Well, are you drinking right now?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, don't drink anymore the rest of the night. Call me tomorrow morning when you're sober." So I kept on drinking that night because I don't take direction too well, but but I did call him the next morning, and then I called him the day after that and told him I got 24 hours. He said, "Well, then let's start going to meetings." This time he told me you need to do 90 and 90. This time I did exactly that. I forced myself, through whatever I was doing. I was working full time. I was working at this window factory. You got to start at 5 a.m. But I forced myself for 90 days to show up. And he also said, when you go into these rooms, you need to go around and introduce yourself to everybody and shake their hand and tell them you're an alcoholic. He told me to do that before, but I was like, that's crazy. People don't do that. That's not normal. But this time I stopped listening to myself, telling myself not to do what I was told to do, So this time I went around and I introduced myself, and I got amazing responses from people. They smiled at me. They said, "Welcome." It was something I hadn't heard in a long time. Usually I was hearing, "Please don't come back here. Don't call me anymore." It changed everything for me, just showing up every day. When I started going back, people would recognize me and say, "Hey, Chris, how you doing, man?" And it made me want to keep going back. And the more I went, the more I started getting people's phone numbers, the more, it just made me feel like I had a home, like a place to go. And that really made the difference. It made me want to try. Then I started listening to the guys in the room talking about what they do every day. The guys that have, the most time. They wake up every morning and say your prayer every morning. Ask God to keep you sober. At night, tell God, "Thank you for keeping me sober." These are the things that I have to do today. There's one thing I have to do perfectly every day, and that's not drink. I don't live these principles perfectly every day, but one thing I do is I apologize when I make mistakes. I get up the next day and I start over, and I try to have a better day. It's like they say, some days are better than others, but I don't let the bad days keep me from coming back. And I mean, that's really been the difference in my life. So thank you all for listening.